Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of the China Experts. Today, I've got Ricardo on the line from Zig Ventures, which is part of the Mariposa group. And Ricardo and I have had a very interesting relationship in the last 1 year. It was really nice because I think, Ricardo, you found me on LinkedIn through a couple of videos I'd done. And one of the things that I will never forget is when you said, Christina, those videos hit my pain points straight away, and I wanted to have a conversation with you. Ricardo at that time was already selling into China for about 18 months or so, 18 months to 2 years. He had run into a lot of obstacles and roadblocks, and it was time to decide how he was going to bring the business in what direction. So today we're going to be talking about Zig Ventures and its journey in the last almost 1 year since I've known you, at least.
Yes.
What has been the outcome, which has been phenomenal and very, very exciting. So Ricardo, let's start off with the beginning. Grupo Mariposa is a Latin American company, very large in the food and beverage and snack industries. They're also, I believe, the biggest bottler of Pepsi in Latin America. So it's very, I guess, Latin American, US centric, right? So what was the trigger where you said China now?
Yeah, thank you, Christina, for the introduction. I'm happy to be here. Well, you know, when you're practically Latin America focused, US focused, in reality, and to be honest to you, we have never even seen China as an opportunity for us. It presented as an opportunity when we understood and get some knowledge about the cross-border models that they exist in China. When that happens, there was a partner that practically introduced to us that new model on the e-commerce in China. So that was when we first started thinking like, hey, with this model, we can actually still be producing in Latin America, all the products, all the focus what we have been having during the past 130 years, but then we can start looking for the biggest market of e-commerce in the world, right? Because it's so that far away from us, actually, as I was telling you, we have never even blinked to see China as our next target to expand the business from LATAM. Probably we have seen Europe first or even Africa first before going to Asia, right? So when this model opened up for us, it was a big opportunity. We understood that China is the biggest e-commerce market in the world, but again, we didn't have any much knowledge about it, right? When the model started, we just got engaged with that. Actually, I got really engaged with that. At that time, I was on business development on the Believe side. The Believe is the beverage, the beverage division of Mariposa Group. We were trying to find new markets to expand the beverage that we were producing in Latin America. Believe vision is how can we create Latin American products and sell them to the world, right? We have really good heritage of ingredients, flavors that you can only find in Latin America. And how can we get those flavors, those ingredients, all the fun, the dancing of Latin America, and get out in the world and start offering these products. And of course, with Asia, the biggest market there, probably with no good, I'm not gonna call it good, but no big history of creating between Latin America and China because of the, because of the many
distance. Well, there's
exactly
the distance
and many barriers that they have existed before. It has never even crossed our minds, right?
So I'm curious, this partner that approached you, basically, have you been working with this partner previously in other jurisdictions, or how did this, I'm just curious how the conversation popped up about China.
The word, they were focused on Europe, actually. Europe also has cross-border, so they were focusing Scandinavia market. So they were using many European warehouses for different products, and they were practically via cross-border models selling the products to Scandinavia consumers through e-commerce and getting all the benefit of the cross-border. Then they find out that China also has cross-border models where it's practically the cross-border model is not only that, okay, it's going to be easy to sell it, but it has many benefits that for a first entry or testing the product in the markets is really beneficial in terms of fast go-to-market. You don't need to really register the trademark or have the registration or the certifications, regulations, etc. That normally when you want to launch a new product, you take around 9 to 12 months to do both registrations, health registrations, all that. Cross-border models don't have that limitation. So actually you don't need to register the trademark, nor you don't need to also register the health certificates. So you can actually test the product with the same label that you're producing in Latin America, in our case, and test it with these cross-border models. The other benefit that cross-model model has is that normally you have a reduced or zero duty tax. So actually there's no duty tax because you are technically not importing to any entity in the country. You are selling from one country to another country via e-commerce. So that gives an opportunity to many brands that want to test new markets on a cross-border model without going all in, a lot of investment, a lot of resources, and a lot of time to do that investment, right?
So out of all the products that Believe, you're a BD manager of Believe, so I'm going to focus on the Believe side. Yes. Out of all the products that Believe produces, why Citrix?
Yeah, we did a little research to understand of all the portfolio that we have. Of course, even though there must be interested for a lot of the beverages that we were selling in Latin America, we needed to make sure that the portfolio that we sell in China is something that works, that what we call the product market fit, right? But also that is feasible, right? We need to make, because at the end, we are producing in Latin America, shipping to China and selling to the Chinese consumer on the e-commerce, right? So also the pricing needs to be right. In China, there's a big market where consumers from years ago, they started preferring imported products because a lot of lack of trust and safety of local beverage and products, specifically on the beverage and food industry. There has been a history of bad quality and safety of productions, right? So Chinese consumer was starting to already understood imported products. They want imported products and they're willing to pay a little more to make sure that what they're consuming is an imported product that assures them quality and safety, right? So when we selected our, and then I'm going to go to Citrix, when we select our portfolio, we make sure that the prices are products that are giving a value added to the Chinese consumer, which is some premiumness in the products, healthy. We're really focused on healthy products. That's a big trend. And Citrix, to be honest with you, it was a product that we were already selling in China, but we were selling through a Chinese distributor. It was not a big
volume,
but we already have everything that we needed to say, hey, this is the first product we want to test on the model that we just got introduced, and that's why we decided to start with Citrix.
Okay, so what was so you launched, you set up the flagship store for Citrix. What was the success after the first 18 months?
I think that the most important thing is that you prove that you have the product market fit, like the consumers like your product. Of course, there's always going to be something they don't like, but just, what you need to understand the first, I'm going to probably the next 6 to 12 months is if the consumer like your product and you can see your product expand in that market, right? If you launch a product and the consumers don't like it, it's not going to work, right? So our first 18 months where we launch, we noticed that we were getting a really good reception from consumers, not only from consumers, but also from buyers. A lot of buyers on different channels, e-commerce buyers also, show us interest about an imported NFC juice. So citric is not only a normal juice, it's an NFC, which is not from concentrate. It's 100% freshly squeezed, right? It's natural. So that gives it a little more premiumness, which what I was explaining early. Is healthier, right? You don't add any, it doesn't have any sugar added or any preservatives. So it's natural product. And then we proved on those 18 months that buyers were interested to list these products. And through the e-commerce, through our flagship store, where we have direct access to the consumers, because of the reviews and the ratings that they send on a flagship store. With all that information and feedback, we could really prove that citric was a product that they were liking. Of course, you need to tweak. You cannot assume that everything that works in our local markets, then you're gonna do the same in China. But Absolutely. At least the product, the quality, the flavor, they were liking it very much. So that was the main idea of the testing, right?
So I'm curious, how did you get over the hurdle? Because this is actually a dilemma that many brands face, not just in F&B. How did you get over the hurdle of convincing your board to invest in something that you don't know if it's going to be I mean, you said you were already selling to distributors, but small volumes, right? So how do you convince somebody to say, I need XYZ amount to push this to see if it's really going to take off or not? I mean, I've never asked you this question actually, but how was that conversation?
Actually, it's interesting, that conversation, because for a big corporation like Mariposa Group or like Believe, when you actually are looking for new businesses that require some certain level of investment, and especially new business that you're not going to see a return in the next 1, 2, 3 years.
Of course,
it's more difficult to set up the board. But I think that what convinced us and our board was first the market, right? We were not launching in a small market. We were launching on the biggest e-commerce in the world. So the upside of that is, imagine if one of your products just is a hit with Chinese consumers, right? You have the biggest market in the world. So the scale and the upside of that, it's huge, right? It's a huge business. That's the first signal that it was interesting for our board. And the second was the technology and the e-commerce ecosystem. It's something that you have never seen anywhere else. At least from the Western side, or in Latin America and the US, when you think about e-commerce, you automatically have in your head Amazon, right?
Sure.
So I know how e-commerce works. You said it's like how Amazon works, but actually in China, it's completely different. You start to get to know a little bit of the ecosystem, and you are a guy that or a company that you know that you need to start transforming the company into a more, e-commerce online
modern infrastructure.
Exactly. And also the COVID showed us that you need to start adapting. So
sure.
if you're in the consumer, in the CPG industry, so if you're in the CPG industry and you are not really getting into e-commerce or online digital transformation, you are getting behind, right? So
I think especially in China.
Yes. Right. I think everywhere right now. Right now, if you're online or trying to see how to digitize your business, how to work with the technology, how to make it online. Again, COVID showed us that you need to adapt. We need to start getting all the technology and the digital transformation that we can to create more scalable business.
Right.
And I think those 2 points, the biggest e-commerce market in the world, also China is not just the biggest e-commerce, but the biggest consumer product market in the world, at least in retail. And the e-commerce, the network, what we're going to learn from the technology from China and Asia, I think that just convinced our board completely to go and at least explore and make an opportunity to learn from China on these points.
I'm curious, is also a third reason the fact that you were going to use an intermediary that you had already used in Europe? I mean, there was some sort of relationship there as well, right?
That was the primary fact. Without them,
Right.
probably we were not even
Going to consider.
We were not even considering China because we didn't know about it and how it worked.
Right.
So probably in our priority markets of expanding, Asia was the last one. We were Latin American focus and the US, right?
Right.
Probably we still have more markets in Latin America to expand our portfolio. So like, without someone to give us a guide and show us that there's a way of selling your products in China in a profitable way with a model that is agile enough that reduces you the risk, the cost of launching, and fast time to markets, probably we never have considered China in the next 10 years.
So what happened last summer?
Last summer?
I'm leaving it very broad.
Yeah.
So what happened last July when you reached out to me?
We had a bad experience with that distributor. They had a lot of, actually it was difficult, you know. The good thing is that they show us that there's a way to go to China and start exploring, which was what we
was the push you needed, right? It was the
push.
It was the real trigger that brought
there's an
the spark.
opportunity. Yes, there's an opportunity where you can do this, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, we have never even heard about cross-border after these partners, right?
Right.
The thing is that, well, we started with these partners and there was practically two things that just didn't work, and it was the communication and the transparency. So we were setting up a business, we're selling our brand through from the other side of the world, right? And practically there was no good communication, and there was no transparency of the business on how our brands were doing and of the numbers, right? So it was really difficult situation where we understood that there was a huge opportunity because we were receiving feedback from consumers and from buyers that the product was really good, right? So we had the product market fit, but the execution of doing it started getting complicated because of these two factors. So last summer, it was not only communication and transparency, but also they had internal issues. Just to don't make the story longer, they went bankrupt, right? It was a big issue. We were already with them selling in the Chinese market through the e-commerce mainly. We're starting to explore the offline retailers because there was a lot of good intentions and interest to expand at least this brand, Citric, the orange juice, in the Chinese market through offline channels as an imported product. At the end, they were bankrupt, so we were in the middle of what to do, because at the end we have already done the most difficult part, which is prove that our product
was working.
Work in the that's the most difficult part.
Yeah.
The other things you can change, you can pivot, you can make things, but if the consumers don't like your product, you don't even have a chance. So we have a chance, and by probably June, July of last year, we're like, okay, what we do, because we have already get a sense of the huge opportunity that China can be for our products, for Latin American products. You know, there's potential there. We have already get a sense of how the e-commerce works, how the network, the ecosystem in China works, the live streamings. We were amazed by the live streamings. For example, last year, in 2021, we did a huge live streaming with one of the biggest influencers, or KOLs, it's called in China, which is key opinion leaders. We sold like 5 containers of orange juice from Argentina in China through e-commerce in 5 to 10 seconds. So when you think about it, it's just you're selling 5 containers of orange juice through a live streaming, which is like a live broadcast of an influencer with 50 million, 60 million people, viewers live. And they were just showing our orange juice and saying, hey, they're drinking, and saying, hey, let's try it.
It's amazing.
We went out of exactly, and I know exactly how much we sold first because we went out of stock. That was the stock we had. We didn't have more than 5 containers. We went out of stock, and we couldn't sell more. So when you see that, when you see like, okay, how big it is, the upside that you have there and the opportunity that you have there, for us, there was no question that the opportunity was huge, and we need to start trying not only with these oranges, but with other products that are similar in terms of healthy value proposition and premiumness value proposition with good quality, and again, healthy products, right? So we take a decision of going in by ourselves, creating a.
Well, I think let's backtrack just a little bit, because originally you were thinking of buying them out, right?
Yes.
And using the existing structure that they had and the employees that they had to keep going, to just actually keep going. But it would never have solved the issue of communication and transparency, because the people internally were actually the issue. I mean, if you can't communicate with the team and the staff, you're still going to run into the same problems, right? If they cannot give you the transparency, or they don't have the skill set to give you the transparency, that's also not an option. I mean, there were other reasons as well, but it wasn't solving. It was an immediate solution, but it was not a long-term solution for the whole China market. If you would have done that, it would have been so much more to do, if you think about it. So in the end, you decided to go on your own.
Yes. Well, after that, after a lot of
back
months
and forth
analyzing what we should do, and what really motivate us, and that's actually thanks to you, Christina, and Woodburn, is the network that we were really able to create. Because the most difficult part of us was, again, we understood our product work, but when you start thinking, even though like, okay, now we want to go in, we understood that we don't want to buy these guys. We want to create a greenfield. We want to create a company from zero to offer Latin American and US products through the e-commerce and the cross-border model to Chinese consumers. When you start thinking, even though we have already had like 1 year, 1.5 years of selling our product, we still didn't have any network, zero actually.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that we needed to connect, like, okay, with whom we're gonna get our product from Latin America to China, how we're gonna solve the supply, which is really a big element that we needed to solve. Who is gonna help us manage the e-commerce? Also, with all the partners, the TPs that we learned how China work actually with the e-commerce platforms. You cannot sell just by your own. If you want to go with the biggest e-commerce platforms in China, you need to work with a TP or with a DP, depending on which platform you are.
Which ones you're choosing to work with, yeah.
Exactly. Then it's not only supply and e-commerce, but also.
I think maybe we have to clarify what DP is. I think a lot of people haven't heard. So people might know TP. So a TP is originally it was called Tmall Partner. You use these guys not just for Tmall now, you use it for a lot of other e-commerce platforms, but they're intermediaries that set up the flagship stores, run the stores, coordinate with the logistics providers on the inventory, etc. And now DPs are Douyin partners for Douyin, which is the TikTok of China, just to clarify that. So I have to share a story because I have always loved Ricardo's enthusiasm for China and for what is happening. And I will never forget the first call where I introduced him to a TP partner, and he literally wanted to sign right there and then without even talking to more.
Yes, you need to give the background, please. Just so people understand.
The first thing is obviously the language barrier was huge for Ricardo. I mean, the previous partner, literally the language aspect was, it was huge. You couldn't communicate with them. I mean, when we say you couldn't communicate, it was pulling teeth out of them in English to get information. And when Ricardo had that first call with fluent English speakers who had also more of a Western mindset, probably, which also helped, he got so excited. He was like, "Oh my God, I spoke to somebody in English and I want to sign right there and then."
Yes.
But obviously, it's always better to talk to more people and have more conversations to realize who's actually on the ground, who's available to work with. And that you can work with more than one TP. You can work with more than one logistics provider if you wish. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket and just work with one provider, right? I mean, now you're getting even more strategic, Ricardo, with splitting out products by TP. So it's even getting more complex because you're getting to know more people in China. Ricardo used a great term, you've got to know the cross-border e-commerce ecosystem, but you've also got to know who's in that ecosystem to help you, right? I think the conclusion is you can't do it on your own. You have to work with people to help you do it. So it's been painful and yet very interesting, hasn't it?
It has been an interesting and excited two years actually.
Yeah. And so I mean, probably now is not the best time to say where are we today, because there have been the Shanghai lockdowns, which have caused for every F&B company or consumer company to struggle with. But where are you today? What does your business look like today, 11 months later?
Yeah, well, we managed, again, with the network that we created, and we are still creating that network. As you mentioned, I think that's really the important thing, to get to know who can help you manage this China business, right? And also, that doesn't mean that one provider is going to be the solution for all your problems. Probably that means that once you start to get more people, you get to understand who actually is better for some of the products you're going to be testing. And it doesn't mean that you need to build just one network, but build more than one suppliers or partners for each of the areas that you are working on. That's probably one of the things that you recommend us to do. We did. That's good, because sometimes you don't want to put everything in one basket, right? What if it doesn't work? Or at least we still are right now in a testing validation period. We still don't know what works or what don't. We just managed to set up the company. We set up all the structure and the basis. So we have a local team right now. So we have a team in Latam, we have a team in Hong Kong, and we have a team in Shenzhen and Shanghai. So we have already set up a complete structure between Hong Kong.
I want to say this was done in 11 months during COVID pandemic and the last 2 months of the Shanghai lockdown. It's been amazing at how quick you've also made decisions. Because not everybody is like that in terms of making decisions. And probably also mention yourself, you're on the way to Hong Kong.
Yeah, I'm in Thailand right now. I'm going to Hong Kong next week.
Most foreigners are leaving Asia. Ricardo's heading into Asia, which is amazing.
Well, you know what people say when there's not chaos, but whenever there's down, there's always opportunities. Just need to find it. So we're not afraid to establish our company. We know. We know that this year is challenging. Actually, we just set up everything on the start of this year, the end of last year. So we weren't ready for all these lockdowns, but we need to be agile enough, as you mentioned, take quick decisions, agile decisions, and pivot. So we know where we need to go. And most importantly, how can we validate what we want to validate to make sure when we will be ready to scale the business, right? So as I was mentioning, we already set up legal structures. We already set up people structure. We have already a team in the ground in China working with all our partners. We have a team that manage the supplier providers. That means all our warehouses, non-bonded and bonded, all the transportation we are doing, not only in mainland China, but also we are already selling in Hong Kong market. While Shanghai was in lockdown, we get a little bit of time to think what we needed to do. So we started expanding the Hong Kong market, which was already open. Now that Shanghai is open, we're gonna start checking what opportunities, what we can do to be ready when Shanghai and when the e-commerce market starts recovering. We want
and I think this is where Douyin comes into play, because that's a new platform that you're going to be exploring now, right?
Yes, exactly. We also understood that there's a huge trend in China where a lot of consumers are moving from Tmall to Douyin, because it's more entertaining. Normally, when people, it's not that Tmall doesn't work, it's still the biggest e-commerce in the world and still is gonna be. I have no doubt about it. But there's a huge trend on TikTok, the China Douyin, where people always loved entertaining or having fun. They always find a time in their day to look for some fun videos. And those same videos that they are looking with the KOLs of TikTok, they started with like one year ago or some months ago, where they open up the social commerce platform for Douyin. That means that the same influencers or KOLs that were doing the content of the videos, the favorite content of the people in China, they also started selling products online on their videos. That was the whole point of the live streaming with team. So Douyin implemented this in a social platform. That means that Douyin in China can sell products. It's not only a social media platform, it's a social commerce platform. And it's getting huge, specifically on the food and beverage category. So wanted, again, the thing is to experiment, find where our brands were, where are our consumers, and keep learning from the consumer, from the Chinese consumer, and from the Chinese ecosystem, right?
So Ricardo, I'm guessing that a lot of people are listening to this now and are saying, wow, they must have a lot of investment capital. I mean, to experiment and do this and try out. And, I guess there's a certain level of thinking that he's talking like there's money coming out of the clouds and falling on him, which is not true. I mean, you're on a budget, right? And I think it'd be interesting to kind of maybe share a little bit your business model thought, right? How are you approaching the Chinese market? What is your thought for each brand that you're bringing in? And I just want to also emphasize that Ricardo is not only planning on selling Believe or Bia products, it's also attracting other US, LATAM brands and being an intermediary for them to get into this huge market, right? Because the infrastructure is there. He's got the infrastructure. He can represent anybody now, and they're learning by doing, so that people can eliminate these one-off costs that you've incurred, or let me put it another way, the challenges that you've had to pay for to actually get into the right system. But what is your business model? What is your philosophy for the new brands you're going to start bringing in, which you will be starting to bring in? And maybe you don't have to put a dollar sign around it unless you're comfortable. What is the investment capital that a brand would need to really kick this off? Because people know that KOLs are expensive. Setting up a flagship store on Tmall is not cheap. And I get it that you will, if you do it, you'll see the return, not overnight, but over time. But maybe you can share a little bit for these new brands that it's not so overwhelming. Like it's not right?
Yeah. It also happened for us. For example, what I'll say is, for example, if we want to launch your brand out on a new market, right? It doesn't matter where. The traditional way of doing it, we never go back and reflect about it. But the traditional way of launching a new brand in a new market is not effective at all, right? Normally, you take first a lot of time of teams, marketing team, commercial team, data team, financial team, to really understand the opportunity, how much it's going to cost the company to launch that brand in a new market, and how big is the opportunity, right? So you start with a market research, understanding, the market is this size. If we get in, these are the competitors. We understand that. We're going to do all this, right? That is awesome. But it has some cost in terms of money and time, right? After that, you realize, okay, it's an interesting opportunity. let's set it up. What means setting it up? It means waiting or registering regulatory certificates, and for your brand to be able to be sold the traditional way to a distributor in that market, that takes around 9 to 12 months. So actually, you cannot launch a brand, at least many Latin American countries and the US works like this. You cannot launch a brand in less than 1 year, right? So you need to take all this time, all these resources, all this money, all these teams, put them together and build opportunity and launch. Then you're gonna set up the budget, right? The marketing budget. You don't want to launch like with low budget and then you don't have any impact at all. So you set up everything. And many times, you know, as many new launches, new startups that are starting, your product is not gonna work because you never tested the product market fit until you launch, right? And many times you wait 12 months, a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of money, market research, blah, 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 blah. And then you put the product in front of the consumer and they just don't like it. There's no fit, right? So this new model that we are creating, not just for our brands, but for any brand, it's a more efficient way of saying, hey, let's test if your brand works with the consumer first, right? So actually in 3 months, we can set up your brand. We just need to send one container to one of the bonded warehouses that we have in China, set up the stores, and in 3 months, we can start testing, like a pilot testing to check if the consumers are liking your brand or what they are saying, and if there exists that product market fit, right? Of course, we're not gonna go crazy and say, hey, let's launch everything and let's see what it tests. Of course. Prioritization of understanding what the market data to understand what are the big categories, the big trends, and what type of brands we know and we understand based on our buyers, our e-commerce platform buyers, our distributor buyers, and the data that we have from the consumer that we can get to understand and have an idea of what we need to test, right? What categories we need to test in the beverage, food, and even we're gonna open alcohol categories with the Chinese consumer. So this model with cross-border, again, it lets you test your product or your brand in between 3 to 5 months. And then you'll take 6 months to understand if your brand can have opportunity with the Chinese consumer or they just didn't like it. Right. If they just didn't like it, yeah, you're gonna lose money, but you're gonna lose less money than the traditional way of doing it and setup. But the upside of the Chinese consumer liking your product is the biggest market of e-commerce in the world and the biggest market of food and beverage in the world. So the upside is you have everything to win. So that's our strategy. Let's first launch your product on the cross-border model on e-commerce, right? It's just like one container, let's call it little investment just to test it with the consumers. Once we start getting traction, understanding that your product is working, of course, at the same time, we're going to start doing all the trademark registrations and all the regulatory registrations needed. So then we can expand it to offline, right? One of the things about the cross-border that I mentioned the benefits, one of the limiters is that you can only sell on e-commerce. So if you're on a cross-border model, you cannot sell to the offline supermarket, for example. You are limited to only sell through e-commerce directly to the consumer, right? From the bonded warehouse to the consumers. And there's a cap that the Chinese consumer can buy annually of $4,000 US. So they cannot buy it's
26,000 renminbi.
Yes. Yeah. Each Chinese consumer cannot buy more than 28,000 RMB per year. So they use cross-border to test new products or new technologies. And
then they try to find it locally.
Exactly. Yeah. So the strategy is let's launch cross-border. Let's try to understand and validate which brands work on a less costly, less risky, and faster time to market to with the consumers, right? And then if it works in the 8 months, 9 months of validation period or 1 year that we are testing it, we're already getting everything ready. So you have the trademarks registration, the CFDA certificates, the regulations, everything ready. So then we can expand it not only on the e-commerce with different stores domestically, but also start looking for buyers on the offline channels or omni channels also. So you can really build a strategy or the roadmap not only on e-commerce but also on the offline in China. So that's, I think it's one of the things that actually don't exist in many countries in Latin America. If I think about cross-border, it's a disruptive model that lets you test the product easily with the local consumers where you want to try and test
And ultimately it's cheaper than actually investing in the old traditional way. And it's also giving you answers much, much faster.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
One thing about the Chinese consumers I want to mention for the brands that are listening to us is that, at least in our case, and I think it's the normal case, of all the Chinese consumers that buy on e-commerce, I think like 60% or 70% of them leave reviews or comments. So that means that you're going to receive a huge amount of feedback.
It's your focus group, actually. It's ultimately a focus group.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. So actually, you just need to start selling. So you start receiving that feedback in the real market instead of doing or paying a lot of focus group. Yeah. And probably it's going to cost you the same, just that you're testing it more quickly and more efficiently.
Right.
Then if it doesn't work,
well, if you do the traditional focus groups, you're not selling anything. You're giving product for free. Not. Right?
Actually, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So that's the model we're building for any brand we want to launch in China. It's first e-commerce cross-border. We validate that it works with the consumers. The brands that we prove that have product market fit, we make a plan to scale them. And scaling means more e-commerce platforms to list and start to grow the roadmap for the offline sales, which we understand, at least beverage and food, the e-commerce is the biggest one in the world. Just to get an idea, the e-commerce in China is 6 times the e-commerce in the US, right? But still, the offline in China is way bigger. So when you think about a normal beverage and food mix, still the e-commerce in China of the total food and beverage is like 20-30%. That means that you still have the 70% of opportunity on the offline market and channels. But this model gives you an entry strategy to test it quickly without doing a big investment or having bigger risk, right?
Right. And ultimately, you can find out within a year, right? Exactly. I mean, if you do it well. Probably a lot of people are also asking, or the biggest concern for them within the budget is the marketing. And obviously, you have to have marketing budget because people have to get familiar with you. Right?
Yeah.
In your opinion, having gone through this, and I'm sure you've done very different types of marketing plans and strategies, it seems like KOLs has worked the best for you. Is that fair to say? Or what has worked for you in terms of marketing in itself?
For us, live streaming is the most efficient way of getting a lot of visits or a lot of awareness of your brand, and still do a lot of sales, right? So it's costly. Doing a live streaming, it depends with who. It can get costly, but it's way more efficient than doing any other marketing that we have done. It's a way of bringing thousands of visits, thousands of orders in question of one month.
Yeah.
15,000 orders, 10,000 orders. So imagine the feedback. 15,000 orders, it's like 10,000, 12,000 consumers giving you reviews, product ratings, feedback, what they're liking, what flavors they like. And it sells. You're selling 15,000
at the
orders.
Same time, yeah.
It costs one live streaming, the biggest one, it can cost you between 5,000 to 20,000 US dollars fixed fee, and then a 20%, a 10 to 20% commission of what you sold. So it's costly. But when you say like, okay, let's put 20,000 US dollars, but you're going to get 15,000 consumers giving you feedback, you're going to get sales from that. It's the same that costs you, for example, a focus group, it costs you 20,000 US dollars for 10 to 200 people,
Yeah.
So it's way more effective. You are doing it in the market. You are testing way many other things that you're not going to be able to do in a small focus group. And you're already executing in the market, right? Understanding what works and what not of your product, and also of the marketing that you're investing as a brand. Not for every brand, it works the same. So that's a part of the validations and learnings that we need to get, and have a mind of, okay, we are testing. So we are trying to understand what the consumers like about the brands we're launching. So we leverage on that, but also what they don't like, so we can learn. And if we can adapt some of the brands to the Chinese consumer, that's a plus. The same we do with the marketing. Probably some activations are going to work for some brands, and other activations are going to work for different brands, right? It's just a process, and the brands need to be willing to embrace this process of experimentation and learning if they want to be successful in China.
So Ricardo, for somebody who's, or no, actually I want to do it as an exercise for you. What has been, if you look now 3 years ago, when the partner came and said, hey guys, have you ever heard of the cross-border e-commerce model in China? What would you do now differently compared to what you did back then, not knowing anything?
As a brand?
As belief, what would you have done differently after now the last 3 years of learning? Because the trigger was this one partner, right?
Yes.
But what would you actually, do you think everything would remain the same, or do you think you would have done certain things in a different manner? Would you have done more research on your own? Would you have tried to connect with more people? What would you do differently?
I think you need, that's why it's so important, the visibility of the business, right? It's not like, oh, someone is just managing my business and I'm happy. No, the idea of this experimentation is that you learn, right? The brand, if I'm talking as a brand working with us, right?
Right.
If I was a brand, what would I tell them is, okay, this is a process where we're going to find out if your brand can have product market fit. But in the brand perspective, they need to be together with us in this journey to understand and to have all those learnings. So we understand what is working and what not, right? So for that, they have to have the visibility and the transparency and the communication to really, really understand what is working, and with what is not working also, let's pivot, right? It's okay, this is not working. This doesn't mean that, oh, okay, it
we
doesn't
give up.
work, we give up. No, we need to start looking other ways. At least I'm talking about marketing, for example, because that's something that we still, when we launch our first brands, we didn't know what's going to work. And one of the learnings is that, okay, it's not a rule that if that works for one brand, it means that the exact same thing is going to work for the next brand. No, it has happened to us with different brands, that some brands just, I don't know, their audience is in Tmall, for example, and other brands, their audience is in TikTok, in Douyin, and it's going to happen. The idea is to have the
immediate, you have to have the immediate data to know how to pivot straight away.
Yes, and learn. That's the more exactly. As a brand owner, that's what you want. That you want to learn from the Chinese consumer. You want to learn from the market. You want to learn what is working.
And I think this is where it becomes so important for people, from brand owners, to realize that there is a how would I word that? There's a human resource time requirement from your own team. You can't delegate this to partners and trust that they are going to pivot your brand and your business for you.
Exactly.
And you need to have the data, these key matrices to know when things are going to have to change, and never have the fear. So I think there is a sense of fear sometimes, and never have the fear to say to your partner, hey guys, this is not working. So either we continue working with you, or we need a backup plan to work with somebody else. And this is why it's so important to have that network, that ecosystem of partners, to have a backup plan. But I think, Ricardo and the team are very data centric.
Yeah, we need that to really understand how the business or
For
how the
sure.
doing. But you mentioned it, Christina, from the brand perspective, they cannot let their brand be
Run.
run by
Yeah.
by a distributor, and they're just gonna step away and say, oh, they're gonna work it out.
Yeah.
You need to be involved as a brand owner. You need to be involved. You need to really understand how the Chinese consumer works, how what they are saying about the brand,
Yeah.
and bring ideas together with us, as a team, to understand what we need to do to pivot,
Sure.
to adapt, to change, to make it work. It's not like we're just gonna launch and it works or it doesn't work.
And it
No.
runs. It's not automatically running. It's never automatically running.
Exactly. It's learning. Then what we do with those learnings, that's the important thing. Just learning and just having the learnings, it doesn't put you anywhere. The idea is how can we grab those learnings and use them to do action plans and to take the business to a different level, right?
I think it's important to note, Ricardo looks at data matrices on a daily basis, weekly basis, and then monthly basis. I mean, it's not something that it's just he looks at it once a month, right?
Yeah, that's normally what it happens with a lot of companies, right? I have also said that normally when you do a financial closing, you do the closing of the month, then the next you're gonna be closing the month the first week, analyzing the second week, and presenting to the senior management and all the decision makers the third week of the next month.
Yeah.
Where you notice there's an issue that happened last month, which was one month ago, right? And you cannot actually to change it. So the way we are seeing it is we need to have daily, weekly data, so we can really grab the learnings, and what we need to change, adapt, or pivot, do it as fast as we can, so we can be more agile and leverage that data that China and the China ecosystem and the e-commerce gives you. That's the big of the one of the main takeaways.
I mean, I think one of the biggest learnings for me is, because Ricardo's not the only company I've heard of that this has happened, is you do a KOL or live streaming, or you do a 11/11 activity, 11/11 promotion, or you do a 6/18 promotion, and suddenly you have no stock. I mean, as Ricardo said, after 30 seconds, you had no more stock left, right? I mean, it's knowing, and you have to learn from this and say, okay, next time we need double the amount of containers or triple the amount of containers or whatever the case. And this all involves then also your supply chain. Can your production facilitate that? You have to work then with all steps,
And again, that example is perfect, Christina, because also you're going to get out of stock, right? The learning is not just how next time you don't get out of stock. The learning is how the brand together with us involve and understand, okay, how many people buy 15,000? Okay, where they are from, which cities, which you're going to start building.
Are they recurring buyers?
Exactly. You're going to start all that feedback and information that you get. It can actually mean that once you start building your offline network, you understand where your buyers at. So you don't need to start opening stores everywhere, but because the e-commerce gives you a perfect roadmap on understanding, hey, I'm analyzing the data of who buy from us and from where, and you're seeing that these specific cities are the ones that are buying orange juice or wines or snacks or food or whatever, right? The learning is, you can learn a lot. The thing is how you use those learnings and then implement strategies that work based on the feedback you're getting. That's the most important. And we need the brands to be involved in this decision making together with us to really build something that at least a brand that can be purposeful in China.
What else do you want to add, Ricardo, before we finish up today? What is there any sparks of
well, at least, this year has been difficult. There has been many lockdowns, so probably a lot of companies that are currently in Shanghai, in Beijing, in many mainland China, they're analyzing, or a lot of people is getting out of China. But as I was mentioning again, if someone is thinking about going to China and they think this is a bad year, I will say absolutely not. as I told you, is that once there's downs, there's always opportunity. That means that if you're a new brand, what I have seen is that it's expected to come a big rebound. China did it on 2020 with the early COVID. They're having a lockdown right now, so probably it has been really difficult for people analyzing to enter the Chinese market. And now I don't know if they are waiting for next year. My suggestion is don't wait right now.
Prepare.
Just prepare. That's what they're doing. There's going to be a big rebound. People just need to get their trust back, you know, and then they're going to start consuming again in the e-commerce. You know, there's a low down right now, but China and the expectations is that they're going to keep growing. I have even saw a report that just said that probably the consumption is going to be on a CAGR of 6 to 7% from here in growth from here to 2026. So China is not going to stop. The e-commerce is not going to stop. Probably in the short term, a lot of companies are deciding to get out. For me, that's a huge mistake because they are assuming that this is going to last for more time, and then when it stops and the rebound comes, they're not going to be there, or they're not going to be ready, right? So if you are, for the companies that or brands that are analyzing to enter, for me is keep that. There's going to be a huge rebound. We don't know when. We just know that it's going to come. The China e-commerce is not going to stop growing. It's going to keep growing.
Yep.
The economy is going to keep growing. They have been preparing for that. So there's also a huge benefit that the government is going to start to inject in the economy just to gain the traction that it was supposed to have this year. We're just preparing with all the bases. If it's this year that the rebounds comes, we just want to be ready. If it's not this year and it's on 2023, again, we just want to be ready for when that happens. We don't want to get out. We want to still get in, and we want to keep onboarding as many brands as we can. So also, if anyone has any brand from the food, beverage, and alcohol industry that is analyzing to enter or has never analyzed, and now that is hearing us, knows about this model and wants to talk with us, we are also open to that. So
absolutely. Actually, I would like to hit one point, Ricardo, for these brands, you know, that are hesitating. What could they do right now to prepare, right? I mean, if they do market research, the data is a bit skewed, right? So what would you recommend that they start doing? Is it building the ecosystem, talking to people? That's what I've been saying. I'm like, talk to as many people as possible to get yourself prepared, right?
Talk to Christina. As I told you, every time I was like in my downs, like I was having a meltdown in the crisis, I just talked to Christina, and it gives me a better perspective of what we need to be building. You don't need to be exactly. I think they need to be preparing in terms of talking with the network, making sure who the network should be, who they need, what are the core capabilities that they need to build to launch their business. It doesn't matter if it's not in our industry, is whatever industry. I think that you need to be really prepared to understand. You cannot go to China without knowing who your partners are going to be. That network, and it take us how long, Christina, like 4 to 6 months to build that network. So it's not going to be
but it's not long. I mean, some people build a network that takes years.
But if you don't start now, that network is going to be ready next year, and then you're going to be late.
And I will also say the fact that Ricardo hit the point, you know, people are leaving China. I don't want to say companies are leaving China, but a lot of key individuals are relocating themselves from China, like I have. It doesn't mean you can't still reach out to them and have conversations with them. You know, we're now in a digital era where everything can be done by Zoom, by whatever else. that should not be something that halts your business, that you can't meet people face to face. I think Ricardo has not met a single person. He has
That's
hired,
what I was. That's what I was gonna mention. We built this company 100% digital. I haven't traveled to China or Hong Kong in the last 2 years, and we built everything, all our network, or all our ecosystem, all our structure, or everything digitally on Zoom. You don't need to stop. Just contact people, meet them, have calls online, then just start building your network.
Yeah.
And also the structure, you can set up companies
abroad,
structures abroad without being there. You don't need to be there anymore. I think
exactly
that's what COVID also showed us to many people. Of course, I want to be there. I need to see people, but you don't need to do it to build everything. That's in the main point.
Yeah.
So don't wait until, I'm gonna wait until everything gets better.
Yeah.
There's never gonna be the best timing to do it in China, at least. Never.
Exactly.
Last year you will say, in 2020 I didn't do it because COVID. 2021 I didn't do it because the logistics.
XYZ. Yeah. 2022.
Yes, 2022 I didn't do it because
lockdowns.
again lockdown. So then you're never gonna do it. You just need to do yourself. Build a network. Trust it that the network that you're building is something that you feel comfortable with. Once you have that, you just need to go and do it.
Yeah. To finish off, Ricardo, I mean, it's always a bit of a spiel that I say, and obviously it's a bit of a kick for Woodburn, being that it's a bit of a testimonial. How has Woodburn helped you in the last 11 months in terms of doing that? What have we helped you with?
First, Cristina, being my psychology.
Thank you. I like to be called people's therapist.
The therapist, yeah. Actually, what you help us, and what Woodburn has helped us first, it was in building that network. It was what I needed to understand was which capabilities or which partners we needed to build the company that we wanted to build. And then I was just like, hey, Cristina, do you know a logistic provider? And then she just threw me 4 or 5 different contacts, send an email, contact it directly, and then throw me, hey, Ricardo, you have five calls next week with 5 different logistic providers. The same, hey, Cristina, do you know a TP? Yeah, here are 3, 4, 5 TPs. I went and talked to everyone of them, then discussed with Cristina which was the best option.
I think probably what helped also, Ricardo, was I joined a lot of those meetings, not all of them, but I joined a lot of them because I think in some of them I helped you understand how to negotiate a bit in terms of the contracts, the terms.
It's better because most of the people that you contact, you already knew from other contacts, so it's better to have but
it's also the fit.
I
mean, it's also a matter of you fitting with them, right? Not everybody is going to fit with the same provider, right? So it's
that's
also
why
a
you
matter
need
of
to
knowing.
That's why you need to talk. Well, you recommended not only with 1 or 2, but at least make sure that you contact 5 partners on the capability or area which we are looking, and try to prioritize what you really need, what your business really needs, to find, okay, what's the one you need to really.
And I think also you also have to take those conversations with also understanding what do you want to keep in-house and what are you willing to outsource, right? So, there are certain things that Ricardo was like, I'm not quite sure that they're going to give me the transparency I need. So I think I'm going to actually have to hire somebody who's going to fulfill that role, who sits next to me, to give me that transparency, right? So I think those conversations helped you to also realize, I know what their limitations are, and hence I need somebody in-house to support then certain functions, right?
And also, the idea was also and the idea is also to find what you can outsource, because at some point we are starting, right? We don't have as you mentioned, we don't have all these resources in the world to say, oh, I'm gonna build this company like this, and then if it doesn't work, you don't have a lean model.
Yeah.
So by outsourcing and then start trying, we at least are understanding what are the core capabilities that we need to have in-house, because that's what we are adding value, what we can outsource, right? And then once we start scaling, the idea is, okay, it doesn't mean that what we are outsourcing right now is going to stay outsourced for the rest of the company, but the idea is, okay, once we prove that our operating model and our business model works, and we start growing and scaling, what areas or services we need to bring in-house so we can have that scaling.
Exactly.
So I think first was the networking, what Woodburn really helped us, that we had like a couple of months where we just have a lot of calls, a lot of strategy. We really understood what we needed to build in terms of the company, where the opportunity was. And then the other things, it was also Woodburn services that really helped us at least to set up what we needed to set up. Even though we didn't use all the services, we use some of the services that we think are key so we can start a company. Incorporation, we did it, but all the accounting that we're outsourcing, the payroll. So if you don't have a company in China or Hong Kong, you can actually start hiring and use how is called, the
employer of record service.
Employer of record until you develop. So actually, you don't need to have everything set up to say, okay, let's start.
Yeah.
If that's gonna delay you, you can actually have options, which is what we did. Cristina has of our mainland China employees hired through Woodburn Shanghai. We are establishing the Shanghai entity. It got stuck because of the Shanghai lockdown.
Yeah.
Once it's ready, we're gonna transfer those people in-house to our company. But that flexibility that Woodburn gave us let us start 4 months ago instead of starting or delaying the startup of the company operating 6 months.
Yeah.
So that flexibility, that is not just the network, but also the services and the flexibility on services for starting a company. The incorporation, again, you don't need to incorporate the company to start.
Yeah.
At least we didn't need that or need to do that. And then the advisory also is okay. Now that the network is built, that we are using the services, Cristina is still helping us once per month, two times per month, or once per month, to keep everything in order, make sure that, okay, we have everything set up, but we have a non-executive service with Cristina where it helps us as an advisory on, okay, now that we're implementing everything that we were planning to do and everything, are we on the correct path? Do we still need to? I'm still asking Cristina last week, and I'm like, Cristina, I need a couple of contacts for this and that, and she just started looking. It was the
certification and regulatory affairs
certifications, and remember the contacts with the American.
Oh, yes. with the chambers of commerce, with the associations.
Right now that I'm moving to Hong Kong, the next important thing for us is, okay, we built the partners network. Now we are locally incorporated in Hong Kong, and now we are building a Hong Kong network.
Yep.
So we are associating with a lot.
And the next step will be a China network, right?
And a China network, exactly. So that also is helping us right now a lot. So a lot of things.
I mean, there's one thing that I want to touch on that we haven't spoken in this conversation that I was a roadblock for a while. It could be a roadblock for a lot of US companies, but certainly a lot of bigger brands in Europe as well, is corporate governance. So I think this was also very, very interesting because the company itself has very stringent corporate governance regulations that they have to abide by. And obviously going now into Asia is completely new territory for everybody. So this can also be an obstacle for a lot of brands who have to abide by certain internal corporate governance regulations, and are stuck with gaining partners or gaining information from China because there's not a tie. Just to give you an example, it took 3 months for me to become a supplier of the HQ in Latin America because they'd never seen a Chinese business license before. They didn't know how to input Chinese characters into the system. So maybe you can share a little bit, Ricardo, on the corporate governance side of companies, because that can always be a roadblock as well. You know, where they say, oh my God, you know, the legal team is saying, oh my God, don't go to China. You don't have to deal now with a new system and all of this, right?
The compliance. I think what helped us, and this company that we set up, I think in record time, was never going to be able if we didn't do it as an independent business unit, right? So what we understood internally in the corporate governance was, okay, we need to have follow what the company needs to follow, right? But at some point, we give complete independence to this business unit. Because we knew that we were going to enter a completely disruptive market for us, something that doesn't work for the rest of the markets that we're working. So the same strategies, the same controls, the same processes just don't work in China, right? And the second thing is we are starting to work on an e-commerce, more digitalized technological market or ecosystem that also we were not prepared for. Probably what we are doing is even higher in terms of digitalization than what our whole company in Latin America has been doing, right? So what we did is for us to be able to disrupt in a new business unit and enter a disruptive market with a disruptive model, we needed to set up as a new different business unit. So the same corporate company doesn't drag it or slow it down with the agility that it needs to be, but with the same resources that you need from a big company. So what we did practically was create a startup. That's why I was able to be the co-founder of Zig Ventures, not only an employee, and this was also a vision of our shareholders from Believe and from Mariposa and Apex, that they understood that if this was going to take place, we need to give complete independence to have the agility of a startup, right? To move with quicker processes, quicker or agile processes and methods, but with the resources of a big corporation. So at the beginning, we were like, oh, we need to register a supplier. We were using the same controls of our company. And then when we sent the business registration and everything was in Chinese, they were like, oh, but it's in Chinese. Yeah, what do you expect? We are entering China. So we together with the corporate structure, we were like, okay, this is not going to work. We need to create a team in Hong Kong and China, which we did, and give them full independence so they can create their own controls and their own processes, so they manage it. And only the corporate and our HQ is there to give us support when we need it, not backwards. That means that if they want us to adapt something for them, that's not going to work, right? So we created for example, on our own ERP systems. We're not using the headquarters ERP systems. We're going to be working on our own ERP systems in China that work more specifically and in the needs that we have right now in China. It doesn't matter that ERP system is not the one that our headquarters is using. The suppliers control, we are using different suppliers control and process on the compliance also, because it doesn't adapt to our headquarters, right? And then the idea is to control the corporate governance, to control it that way. So you can see that it's an independent business. But then when we need some help, like, oh, we need to set the bank account, instead of us that we don't have any historic data. We can negotiate with a bank account. We use our headquarters to help us negotiate with the big banks and say, hey, we're opening, this is a Mariposa. So we have that backup when we need it. So we have the resources and the backup of a big group, but the independence, the agility, and the process so it can move as a startup, which is fast.
And just to say, I mean, it doesn't mean that you don't have corporate governance. It means you just have a different type of corporate governance that fits to the market, right?
Yes.
And gives you then the
Because-
flexibility to also move much, much faster and
Yes.
make decisions much faster than if you were reliant on the corporate governance procedures of the HQ. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is also something that's very unique that I found very interesting that a group was willing to do, because generally speaking, you'll find that a lot of brands just set up subsidiaries in China or subsidiaries in Hong Kong that have to follow the protocols. And it doesn't always work like that. You know, you have to sometimes adapt the business to be able to fit in the market, versus thinking you can replicate it from HQ.
Exactly.
Doesn't always work. Amazing. I've taken up too much of your time, Ricardo. So I'm going to leave it
don't
there.
worry.
But as I do finish off, I mean, I say this to everybody, we are going to come back in 1 year's time and see where you are. So in June 2023, we'll see what's popped up with Zig Ventures, what brands are in the market. And if anybody wants to take a look, I mean, take a look at Citrix. So Citrix, and Oka. Oka is a new brand that's been launched already in Hong Kong, coming up in China soon. OCA, take a look at that. All extremely healthy, phenomenal drinks that are bringing the Latin flavor in. So take a peek. And it's super exciting to see what's coming up. So stay tuned for that. And we'll see in 1 year and 12 months what pops up.
Excited.
A lot of hard work coming up.
Sure. Like the last year.
Exactly.
We're
Thanks,
prepared.
Ricardo. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Christina. Bye.